created social isolation and dire financial loss. And now we have the added grief of seeing Black people murdered on social media. All I can say is that I am raw. And with the recent loss of a dear friend, it's really got me feeling like the ground has totally disappeared beneath my feet. And that feeling of groundlessness seems to be the vibe of the day. So how do we get grounded amidst the craziness? I mean, even beyond the turmoil that we see dominating this year, life is always going to throw curveballs. Well, today I'm happy to share a conversation with Leann, a Toronto-based therapist and yoga teacher who works with clients on issues related to anxiety, depression, and life transitions. Lee believes that we all have the capacity to dig deep, uncover our hidden wounds, and come out resilient with a new outlook on life. I know that you'll find this conversation useful. It's full of practical advice on feeling grounded and cultivating self-growth with practical tools and skills along the way. Enjoy the conversation. Leann, thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of the Conscious Evolution Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful and happy to be here with you today.
Well, I'm also very grateful for you and your presence in my world. I know that you have like this incredible innate ability to really connect with people emotionally and to empathize and understand what we're going through. And you and I had a meeting to talk about your wonderful work. And unfortunately, I had to share with you some bad news about losing a dear friend of mine. And I didn't want to break the meeting because we had been waiting for so long, but you were so dear to me, and I felt so supported as I shared with you. So I'm really grateful that we can have this conversation because it's not just for me, it's for everyone else who is really feeling challenged right now. 2020 has just been a doozy. So thank you for agreeing to be here.
My pleasure. If I can bring anything to anyone who's struggling during what is a crazy time, then that's what I'm happy to do. I know it's been a whirlwind for so many people.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have heard from people is they're really in like a cycle of self-judgment. Like of course, they recognize that this is a seriously stressful period, but they're hard on themselves because they're like not productive. You know, they see all these people online starting businesses, starting blogs and podcasts, and they're feeling like, I'm just a loser. I'm over here stressed out. What would you say to people that are feeling that way?
Totally. I think that that's something that so many people are struggling with right now. And I mean, from my day-to-day, I see a broad spectrum of, like you said, those people who are enjoying this time for a lot of productivity, but also so many people who are feeling extremely low, extremely unproductive, and really just kind of finding that they're falling into that hole. So one of the important things that I always love to let people know is that you don't need to be 100% productive 100% of the time. And what I mean by that is that our world, the Western world that we live in, I truly believe has become a very warped idea of productivity and what it means to be productive. And so much of our time is spent, I look at my friends, I look at my family, I look at our clients, and they are just trying to cram everything into the whole day. Every hour is taken up. By the time they crash on the couch at the end of the day, they have nothing left, no energy, no time. Even if I'm thinking about my friends out there who have unfortunately lost their job or have no direction, some of them have explained that they go through the day and it's 3 or 4 o'clock and they feel that they've done nothing productive at all with their time. So I really want to offer this new version of what it really means to be productive. And like I said, in the Western world, we've adopted this go, 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 get everything done, fit everything into this limited time. But really what we're doing is we're overstressing our bodies. We're throwing chemicals, cortisol, endorphins, all these stress chemicals that are building us up. And we have no time within those hours to just stop. and to breathe and to tell our bodies that everything is okay. Because when our external world is chaotic, our internal world is going to reflect that unless we do something about that. And so I invite my friends and anybody who needs this permission to know that sometimes being productive is simply doing absolutely nothing. It's taking the time and the space to breathe and to stop, or maybe to turn down the music that you realize is causing that chaos, and to just give yourself permission to re-envision what productive looks like to you. Because the way that we're living it right now in this world that I know we're all a part of in the Western world, it's not working, and it's not healthy, and it's not helpful. So let's together re-envision what productive means, because what it doesn't mean is killing ourselves, packing every hour into the day, trying to make ends meet for every single person but ourselves. We need to slow it down. Slowing it down is where the productivity grows and starts truly.
Well, I feel like 2020 is just, it's exactly that. It's giving us permission, because going back to what we used to do wasn't healthy in the first place. Even though we may have felt like we were getting more done, we were seeing rates of burnout, depression, fatigue, like skyrocketing. So I know that another aspect of what you talk about is part of it's self-care. So giving ourselves permission to just rest, to reflect, like relook at our priorities and what we're saying yes to. But another piece of that is self-compassion, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. So how do you advise people who are, really faced with the stress, the anxiety, feeling like they're kind of a loser, and, some people are really feeling that way for reasons that are obvious, like maybe they've lost their job or their business.
For sure.
How would you practice self-compassion in a state like this?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I do want to point out, kind of before I launch into that for my friends out there who are struggling with clinical depression, anxiety, diagnoses, when I start talking about feeling good, that's a bigger battle for my friends out there who are seeking that support. So it's not always easy to hear things like, wow, just start thinking positively, because I want to acknowledge and really honor that that's really difficult for a lot of people. So with that, for anybody else that's kind of in this transitory state of struggling or trying to get to the other side, I always tell people feeling good starts with feeling good. We need to prioritize what that feels like in our minds and in our bodies. And we rarely give ourselves the time to do that anymore.
But how would you do that in the midst of, the people are just coming out of lockdown, they've lost their jobs, they've already probably created family strain, yelling at the kids and the dog and the spouse. Like, how do you feel good in the midst of what we're going through?
Right. Yes. So, acknowledge what doesn't feel good for sure, because that's extremely obvious. But then I always recommend turning to something that gives you some sort of joy. We're not striving for happy. I think it's really hard. And I think we get this idea in our heads that if all is right, if everything feels good, we'll just be happy. And we forget that we are given these emotions as a gift to navigate ourselves in the world. Pain is equally important as that happiness. Without one, we don't recognize or have the other. So when I talk about tapping into joy and feeling good, start with something simple. Start with anything that feels good right now. For me, it's going for a walk in nature, blasting music that feels good for me, grabbing a drink with a socially distant friend in the backyard if that's appropriate, if you have friends nearby, hitting the gym or a workout spot outside that's going to start to boost your endorphins, give you some energy, give you life back. And I recognize that a lot of people will say, okay, Lee, but I did that and I don't feel better. It didn't shift anything in me. And when we hit that spot, I find the biggest shift that I have when I can't get myself there is to do something good for somebody else. We're social creatures. We're built to connect. We're built to love. And we don't give ourselves the permission so often to feel the love, to allow ourselves to feel good. We've put those barriers up. I know so many of my friends right now, their kids come first. Their partners come first. Their jobs come first. Everybody comes first but them. So if you, my friend, are not at a place where you can prioritize feeling any sort of joy for yourself, but you're a healer, you're a giver, you can think about helping those around you, then help somebody around you. Good chemicals are good chemicals. That's going to shift your state and your mind as well, even if it doesn't feel like that in that moment.
You know what? That's actually been my go-to for dealing with everything that happened with the pandemic. You know, when it first hit, because I'm trained in trauma and whatnot, I just instantly went into, okay, meditate. Like I couldn't even tell what the heck was going on early on with, you know, the reports. Is this like the flu? Is this something else? Oh my gosh, we're going to be in lockdown. So my reflex was like, okay, just hit the pause button so I don't go into freak out mode. And then I started getting these messages from other people who were in freak out mode. And so what I did to make me feel better was I went into service. I started leading global meditations and working with some of my healthcare providers who don't know how to do what we're doing, like start a podcast or go online. And it actually made me feel so much better. But I know that can also be like a sneaky, almost a bad coping mechanism if you're always putting other people first. Now, I'm aware of that because I've already burnt out in the past with over-giving with compassion and not setting boundaries. But I think you're so spot on, and I feel like if there's anything we can all do right now is we can show some love and compassion to other people, whether that's just picking up the phone or sending them an email to say that you're checking in on them. It does, for me, it just gives me that little happy boost.
For sure. And you make a good point, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking of, you know, the practices that you and I have spent years cultivating, like meditating. I know for me, every morning for me has to start with silence and turning inwards, because the rest of my day is spent tapping into and helping everybody else with their emotions and what's going on in life. So I know that I need to feel grounded if I'm going to bring that energy to those around me. But I know that we have a lot of friends, people around us who don't like the idea of meditating, who find that really uncomfortable. Or one of the big things that I always hear is, well, that's great, Lee, but I don't have time for it. And I'm always hearing, you know, I don't have time for it. So I started what kind of became a funny idea with a lot of my clients. I kind of call it the toilet time meditation, because we all use the toilet. Nobody says, I don't have time for the toilet. The toilet demands of us. So when you are on that toilet, I would invite you to do a few things. And I know listeners out there bring their phones to the toilet, because I know that I do it too, if we're being real. So in that, right? Yeah. What else are we doing? So we're addicted. It's part of the culture, unfortunately, right now. But we can use that to our advantage too. So if I'm in the toilet, and I know my friends are going to laugh at this, I can choose to send a couple of little texts thinking of you, hope your day is okay, just something to use that time for those friends out there who say, well, I never have time. You got time. You use the toilet. If you're there for more than a couple minutes, I challenge you, put your phone down. Have a couple moments of silence. Look around your washroom. Discover the nooks and crannies you haven't cleaned in a while. Like, that's mindfulness. That's slowing it down. And if the toilet's the only time you can find in your day, then the toilet it is.
But what about the people who say that because of lockdown, they did have more time, and as they sat down, it wasn't just like noticing the things around the house or the apartment, they were being confronted with their own stuff, you know, or things from their own shadow, their own irritability, their own sense of a lack of purpose or direction in life. So what do you say to people who find that going quiet and trying to practice mindfulness brings up even more negative emotion?
Right. That's a really good question. And if I can take it a step back to consider all of my clients that I work with anxiety, during the day, all we do is push our emotions down. We never have time to deal with it. It's never the right time. It's never a good time. We need to meet other people's needs first. So I'm not surprised when those are the people who come back and say, okay, but why is it I get through the day fine, and then I put my head on the pillow and all of my thoughts start coming to me? Or I fall asleep no problem, but at 3:30 a.m., I wake up with a pounding heart and my head is wondering, maybe I shouldn't have sent that email to that executive. Maybe there was a typo. And it's in those moments that our bodies and our minds are struggling so hard to process what's going on, and we're not giving it space to do it. So it's going to come out in the times that feel very inconvenient for us, like when we need to sleep, because there's no other time to process it. So now we're in COVID, and we've been kind of moving at what I said is that extremely fast pace in society now, and none of us have the time. It's never the right time. And so instead of it coming out at night or in our sleep, we are now being confronted with these demons or this trauma that we've been holding on to or that breakup we can't let go of in the midst of our day-to-day while we're trying to function. And I know it's so hard for people to hear this, but if we do not confront our pain, if we do not reach out for support, if we do not find a way that it feels safe and okay to move that through our bodies, then this is what we are going to carry forward with us. And this is a really, really incredible time of change across the globe for so many different reasons. And it's a really good opportunity for all of these people, if they have supports in place, to begin to maybe look inside and work through those pieces. If you're not in a place, if you have kids at home that are young ones running around, you feel bombarded, you don't have time for yourself. I work with those mothers every day. We have found ways to include self-care, personal time, little nuggets of anything in their day. I don't have anybody that we couldn't make it work for. So it's a matter of, can we make it work? Do you want to make it work? And do you acknowledge that this is something within you that is trying to process?
So you mentioned the idea of support. So you're saying if these painful emotions and challenges are coming up, they need to be processed. For some, if there really is some serious trauma there, they're going to need support. What does that look like? Do you mean with a therapist or a coach?
So support's going to look different to everyone. If you have family and friends that you trust that you can reach out to that are there to help you, then I would recommend reaching out to those supports. If you have coaches in your network, somebody you've admired that you've seen go through difficult times, that you've seen their strength, then I would reach out to them. If you have the availability and financially the wherewithal, the okay to do that, I would reach out to a therapist or support. And there are many, many therapists, I know myself included, that recognize that now is a very difficult time for people, emotionally and financially. If you're struggling in either one of those, therapists will do their best to make it work for you. Nobody's going to be coming out of it broke from seeing a therapist. You are not alone. There are so many supports. So if you need it, reach out for it. And even if it's not the right one, somebody will guide you to that spot, to that next support.
And you and I had this conversation, and you told me that in your practice, you're almost 50-50 men and women. And it seems to me, and maybe this is a Canadian thing, I don't know, but it seems then that it must be that men are no longer feeling this stigma of being seen in therapy or asking for therapy. Is that true?
So I don't know. I know that there's certainly a stigma, and socially and culturally, we've brought, the men up around me, we've brought them up to have that tough male masculine exterior. So processing their emotions or taking time to talk about those much softer skills or those softer feelings are very uncomfortable for a lot of men. And I have people always asking, well, if men could just get therapy, or if my husband could just come and talk to you. But it made me wonder. So I did go back to look at my client list throughout the years, and I did notice a 50-50 divide. And it might be because of the type of work that I do or the way I operate. I can't speak to all therapists, but certainly I'm seeing a very clear equal divide amongst people reaching out for those supports. And I'm really happy to see it.
Well, I
think it's time.
I am too. I think especially when we think about the rates of depression and the number of men who commit suicide is higher, at least in North America and the UK. It's higher in men than in women. Not that women don't attempt it. I think that men are more successful in following through. So I'm happy to see that you've got men reaching out and getting support. So one of the things that we touched on at the top of this interview was this feeling of groundlessness. And you offer a very comprehensive approach to getting grounded. You include yoga, you include breath work and meditation. So what can we do at home if someone is really feeling like I was feeling when I spoke to you last week, like there is no ground beneath me and I could see no terra firma, for miles. What do we do when we're feeling so ungrounded?
Yeah, this is always a really, really tough one for people because I have so many people that reach out and they just want to feel better right away. Pain is such an uncomfortable feeling. And when we feel no stability in the ground under us, it's such an uncomfortable feeling. And when people come to me and they say, can you just make it feel better right away? Or what do I do to take this feeling away? Because I don't really know what it is, but I don't like it. We need to move through it. We're not going to be able to move it from our bodies unless we do something to move it from our bodies. So it is going to look like taking those moments to breathe and recognize where we are in our bodies and our minds. This isn't from one psychotherapist. This is kind of an analogy that I heard years ago that I constantly hear in the therapy world. But I hear this idea of consider the human body like our vehicle in the world. You wouldn't get into a car and start driving around or navigating or parking without any guidance or training or support or understanding whatsoever about how a vehicle works. And yet we walk around in our bodies every day in this world like our vehicle with no understanding of what these emotions are, how to process them, why we feel some in our chest and some in our stomach, why we have those clenching sensations. We are literally driving our bodies around with no understanding of the mechanics and machinery. We need to get grounded. We need to understand, what am I operating in this world? What is going through me and around me that I need to sort out? And those are our bodies. Those are our vehicles. So the way to get grounded in that is to tune into that. We need to have quiet. We need to go inwards. We need to start to reconcile with ourselves. What is that knot that maybe has been sitting in my stomach for so long? Or that noticeable lump in my throat that I get when a certain person in my life calls? We need to start tuning into that and noticing that first. That's kind of the first piece. The second piece is always to acknowledge that if your world feels like it's spinning right now, this is temporary. This is going to change. Everything changes for better or worse. When you're having a good day, enjoy it because that's going to change. And when you're having a shitty day, enjoy it because you know that that's about to change. It's perspective.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I know that for me, and I've heard this from many clients, anyone who's dealt with depression, if you're low enough, unfortunately, depression starts to warp your thoughts. You don't think clearly. And that thought that always plagued me was, oh my God, this is going to last forever. This is going to be the rest of my life. And even when I talk to suicide survivors, they say, but there were these little moments throughout a day, someone would say something nice, or I'd get a nice message or an email. So even if you just looked in a 24-hour period, even in those darkest days of depression, there were these little temporary moments of reprieve. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it can feel like, especially this year where we're just getting knocked and knocked and knocked, we feel like, is this ever going to end? But it will.
Yeah. It's depression is a challenging beast, and it reminds one of my best friends who suffered for years and years with depression. She hits those really, really dark places, and she does question taking her life regularly. And that's something she struggles with daily. And together we honor that and we check in with that. But she knows when she's feeling that low, she knows that that could look different tomorrow or the next day. So she uses her tools of meditation, of walking in nature, of journaling and checking in, until she gets that little ray of a little bit of hope and light to get her to that next stage.
That's crucial. So absolutely, if you're going through some stuff right now, and we all are, this is not the time to be stoic and silent. It's the time to reach out. So as Leann said, you either reach out to a friend, a colleague, anyone that you trust, a family member, or a therapist. And I will put in the description for this show the suicide hotline website, where you can look up whatever country you're in. There is always a hotline if you are feeling that desperate. Please do reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And to know for people that you're never alone. The world is struggling right now. We are literally all in this together right now in this moment. All I do all day is talk to people who need support, who feel alone, who know that there is another side to this. There is another door, but they can't quite see the door yet. So it's just having somebody to hold your hand, to be with you in that space, but you're not alone. You've got the entire planet right now in this situation, quite literally.
Yeah, so true. Leann, thank you so much. I know that we have another interview coming up where we can talk about some other exciting things, such as manifesting love, as you are one of the contributing authors to our new book. But I'm really grateful that you made this time to connect at such a sensitive period for all of us. I have put on screen that people can check you out online. They can visit leannwine.com, or you can visit her on Instagram. Change your brain. And I love what you are posting. I think it's wonderful that you're out there on social media so that we can feel connected to you. So I honor you, and I thank you for that.
Thank you so much. You know I'm a huge fan. Love you always, and looking so forward to connecting again soon.
There you have it. We will do it. We will keep it coming. So my dear friends, yeah, we will do it. So my dear friends, there you have it. Please visit leannwine.com or Change Your Brain on Instagram. And remember, no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. And until we meet again, remember that you are truly a gift to this world. So share your presence